There is an old adage, one that you might have heard from a grandparent or village wise person, the one that says, you get out what you put in, meaning your efforts are matched to some degree by the results or the output. Now, take our nonprofit, Pioneer Knowledge Services, who delivers this cool program that you're listening to right now, takes a bunch of effort that you don't even see. We hope that you obtain value from our efforts to deliver it to your powers of reason. Here is where you come in. You, the listeners. Make our efforts rewarded. Consider donating to keep us moving forward. Visit pioneer-ks.org and click on donate. Pioneer Knowledge Services welcomes you to the next Because You Need to Know. I'm your host, Edwin K. Morris. I serve as president and founder of this organization, and we are thrilled to offer this educational program. These design conversations bring you people's experiences from all over the globe in the field of knowledge management, nonprofit work, and innovation.
Hello, everyone. I'm Art Murray, and I live way out here in the Blue Ridge in a nice, quiet place. Matter of fact, we're on a dirt road, and I have to walk half a mile just to get to my mailbox. So that ought to give you an idea. But we do knowledge work out here. One thing probably is important to know is my whole life I've suffered from a very debilitating condition. It's called obsessive compulsive learning disorder. Is the uncontrollable urge to know everything there is to know about everything. So that condition, which I've had all my life, led me into, by various twists and turns, into the artificial intelligence lab in the early 1980s, which just newly opened up at George Washington University. And I was given the opportunity to enter the doctoral program in that artificial intelligence lab. And as you know, artificial intelligence has many flavors, many facets. And I fell into, because of my condition, naturally and quickly gravitated into the sub-branch of AI called knowledge engineering. I hope everybody has some mentor they can point to. For me, the mentor was my doctoral advisor, Dr. Barry Silverman. In my master's program at George Washington, I actually majored in environmental and energy management. And he was the head of the environmental management and energy management program at George Washington. And he said, what do you want to do your doctoral research in? And I said, oh, same thing, energy and environmental management. And he said, no, you don't. And he said, artificial intelligence. And none of his students had any idea. And I attribute success I have today, I attribute to him. And when I did my dissertation defense, and he ran us through the ringer, but then when we went in front of the committee, we were ready. So to Dr. Barry Silverman, I take my hat off. He was my mentor, and everything that he taught me, I carry forward to today.
We've picked a pretty interesting concept to kick around today. You know, it's just so bizarre how little bits and advances in humanity in different worlds. Our talk today is, how does organizations of government of a country establish a smart society, meaning that it is enabled to advance itself to a degree with public utility, public use, public design of a smart design. Art, you wrote an interesting article that really grabbed my eyeballs, and I loved it. So let's talk about that. Can you tell me what a smart city is, or a smart country is?
Well, let's start with smart city. I'm glad you brought that up, because I want to dispel where people are heading in that regard. And it's probably taking not an optimal direction. Smart cities are a pretty good concept that a lot of people know about, and I've been involved personally in smart cities for decades now. I wrote a column in KM World called The Future of the Future. I've written that for almost 2 decades now with over 110 articles. I tend to be kind of ahead of the game, which you have to be if you're writing a column like that. So smart cities, the notion was use technology to wire everything up so that you optimize. I've done a lot of work with Russian scientists. They even cut their teeth back during the old Soviet Union days, where they were focused very much on cybernetics idea. They were probably pioneers in the notion of a smart city. They called it a cyber city or cybernetics. Machines would optimize and control everything, the flow of food, the flow of energy, the flow of traffic, logistics, everything from A to Z.
All the moving parts, basically, of a societal being or a societal state.
Right.
If you want to think like a vehicle, outside the car or inside the car or under the hood, just all the parts of everything.
Exactly. So first of all, grab and identify them, then model how they operate. That's getting into engineering. And then integrate them, stitch them all together so that you've got this nice, smooth functioning thing where everything's kind of taken care of and optimized. That's the notion of a smart city. Here's the problem with that. First of all, you take the humanism out of it. So right away, one of the errors that can happen when you have that kind of mindset is you're mechanizing something that is a society. A good example is synchronizing traffic lights. Okay, we know that's a good thing because you know how irritating it is when traffic's backed up and then the light changes green and two cars go through and then the light changes red again.
Boom.
There's where, obviously you want some good optimization that technology can provide. When you move beyond that and move now to the people and society and how they interact, you don't want that, because one thing I want to make clear, and this is important because a lot of people are missing this now with the bright, shiny object of AI grabbing everyone's attention. I don't care. Artificial intelligence, computers are computational systems. And it's important to notice the difference between computational systems or artificial systems and natural systems. There is nature. Humans are natural systems. They are biological in nature. If you want to go deep into the structure, they are stratified in nature, just like quantum physics. They are not deterministic. You cannot engineer humans in society and natural systems. They require freedom to allow emergence. And Gibson's, it gets a little bit scientific on you. You can look it up. Gibson's affordances, right? To try and enable the proper affordances to let natural evolution take place and enable that and nurture that, versus the traffic lights and all that other stuff. They're best handled by computation. Yeah, we need to separate.
Right. So let me, on IBM's website dated November 2023, what is a smart city? A smart city is an urban area where technology and data collection help improve quality of life as well as the sustainability and efficiency of city operations. When I read that definition of what a smart city is, it's not really talking about the population a whole lot. It sounds like more utilities and, like you're saying, streetlights and electricity grids and water grids and sewage and all those things that are systems that would be smart to have smart stuff on. Your mass transit, all that sort of thing. So smart city does not really address the humanoid component of that system, because that's all tech. That's all man-made. So these are, smart city is for man-made stuff.
Good way to distinguish it, yes.
So the human part, that's out of this loop anyway, that's what we're going to talk about today. Because the article that you wrote that I read in KM World was all about how India, soon to be reverted back to what it was called before it was colonized, and I can't say the word, so I'll wait for you to say it. But India is really focused on building a progressive society that looks at opportunity in a lot of different ways other than just man-made systems.
Right. And the name from the ancient times is Bharat. So that has we don't, in English, don't use the H, the breathalyze. We don't breathalyze a lot of our consonants. So it's Bharat, Bharat.
And what does that mean exactly?
Yeah, Bharat means knowledge, in search of light and knowledge,
Hmm.
believe it or not. So that was the name of their country, their part of the world back in the ancient times was called Search of Light and Knowledge. Can you imagine that, having the name for your country?
Wow. That's amazing.
And a huge body of literature was built during that period and verbally passed down for more than 10,000 years, and only in the last 5,000 years was then put into writing. The trouble there is a lot of those writings, just like any ancient scripture, whether it be Judeo-Christian or the Quran, they all tend to be looked at in today's modern society as mythology. But no, they were writing about deep meaning and deep connections that they observed in nature. Because think about it now, a good side topic. We're talking about now cities, today's world, everything's connected, digitized, right? Go back 20,000 years. Nothing, none of that stuff. Didn't even have pencil and paper. Okay. How the heck did they generate? How did they develop awareness of and their connection to nature? They did. They had to naturally form and develop.
Well, I mean, on that level, I would presume that in that aspect, you're born of nature, in nature. You're not
Exactly.
separate or
Yep,
separated.
exactly. So that was all you had to work with. And you had to use your memory
Yeah.
because you
Right?
couldn't even write anything down. So you'll notice a lot of the ancient scriptures, documents, whatever you want to call them, tend to be canticles and songs. And that's how you pass things down from one generation to the next. And so a lot of the ancient writings from ancient Bharat are indeed verses and songs and chants.
And that ability creates, or at least that tool set, is that their knowledge transfer was embedded in voice, meant there was intergenerational overlays throughout that kept everything sustained. So you had intergenerational contact constantly in order to help strengthen the knowledge flow.
Correct. There's a combination of knowledge preservation and perpetuation. You remember the game you play as kids in a circle. You pass the message, secret message from one kid to the next. And by the time it comes around, it's totally garbled. So they understood that. There was a culture there. All they did, all this certain group, and that's why they have the caste system and the Brahmin caste. Part of the Brahmin caste were called pundits. And all they did was memorize that scripture. Every inflection, every syllable had to be sung and chanted perfectly. For that reason, the secret circle game, it had to be. That was the only way they could preserve it. So there was knowledge preservation going on. It's just amazing that it was preserved for those thousands of years. And at the same time, new knowledge was being generated. They began to evolve knowledge. They understood that the Earth was not the center of the universe. The sun was at the center, and Earth and the planets were spinning around. They were into astronomy long before Copernicus and Galileo. I'm talking thousands of years before. They preserved the knowledge they had and then built upon it.
And everything you've just really laid out here, the history of this land and its way of thinking is deep and it's wide. I wanted to search and see what looked like now. I go to the Indian Knowledge Systems Division website. They got knowledge repository, all kind of the government of India, Ministry of Education. Is this new idea, or maybe it's not a new idea, but they're reclaiming what they were, is what it kind of sounds like. What are they doing to engage the population of their country to prepare themselves better for the future? Because the word that comes to my mind is future-proof.
Right. Well, one area definitely everybody's interested in is sustainability, because we have kind of devolved into a consumption-oriented economy where we just consume, and then waste gets tossed aside. And by the way, not just India, right? There's every continent has its indigenous populations who were doing similar things. They had similar stories and similar connection to nature. Thankfully and very wisely, the current Indian government is saying, let's revisit, reawaken, and go back to our heritage, our ancient heritage, and build upon that, reawaken that, and see how we can apply it to today, because we've probably gone too far in the direction of consumption technology, and we know it's not sustainable. We're going to eventually use up all these resources that we're digging out of the ground and crunching away and then throwing away when we've used them for 5 minutes or to 5 years or whatever. And you see the electric cars that are being trashed already. They're junkyards piled up with old electric vehicles already. And electric vehicles are something new. Part of the driver is simply getting the population to realize, number one, we cannot continue on this current consumption type of course. It's not sustainable economically and environmentally. Number two, let's go back and take a look at what we did before we had all this technology. We got along quite well.
Yeah.
We've survived for tens of thousands of years, 100,000s of years. And then how can we bring the two together? Now we get back to that smart cities idea. So understand that there's a balance. We need to have a combination of human and technology, human and machine, human knowledge and machine knowledge,
Sure.
human intelligence and machine intelligence. But the technology has been evolving like crazy, Moore's law, exponential growth.
Yep.
But what about us humans? So let's look and say, hey, we've got an innate capacity in our human neurophysiology to sense what's going on around us and then make sense out of it and then take action in alignment with nature. Let's awaken that, pick up maybe where the ancients left off, start growing that.
In that voice, this is exactly where I'm seeing. So going back to the Ministry of Education, Government of India, under their vision and objectives, this is what it says from their website. And this is the Indian Knowledge Systems Division. The vision of the Indian Knowledge Systems Division of this organization in the Ministry of Education is to rejuvenate in mainstream Indian knowledge systems for the contemporary world. The objective of the IKS division, the Indian Knowledge Systems Division, is to completely decolonize Indian mind by generating interest and healthy critical reverence for the unbroken knowledge traditions of Bharata for the welfare of the world. Now, that is putting exactly the point on this is very strong for what I just read. They're not saying to keep up with tech trends or digitization or all the things that are usually said about strategies of advancing societies or organizations. They are bringing back everything you just said from what I just read. They are bringing back the importance of the things that existed long before a lot of this stuff, but they want to make it contemporary. They want to update. They want to bring it to the future somehow.
Right, because now you get the best of both worlds. Think back in ancient Bharat, they were isolated, just like China was isolated from the world, just like the Aborigines of Australia were, and even in the Americas, right? All isolated, not connected. And that was fine. They evolved and developed and preserved that knowledge. Now we've got the opposite. We've got this massively interconnected globe where we can instantaneously talk with anybody on the earth, 8.1 billion minds with the capacity to connect to one another, bring these two worlds together. And hopefully that bringing some of that ancient wisdom here will help us, will guide us in the right direction, because as you can see, and I think it's silly to some extent, but there's some realistic aspect to it. The singularity and AI and machines taking over. Yeah, machines will take over if we allow them. And in many cases, we are. Our education system today, just think the alpha generation, they basically get everything they know by asking ChatGPT. Hey, I've got a question. No, just ask ChatGPT, and there's the answer.
Right.
So we don't want to go down. Yeah, we don't want to go down that path too far. We sort of step back.
But I will say, as an antagonist to this concept, is that the laggards will always lose. The laggards will always lose. Those who are fighting progress, those are fighting,
sure,
with the emotional response of, people are losing their jobs, or, we've been doing it like this for 300 years. Okay, there's got to be a balance there. But I think getting back to what you talked about with the human being the center, I hear what you're saying, where technology has over advanced us in some degree to extract ourselves out of being human, out of all those things that have been around for 100,000 years of how people communicate and learn and share and develop relationships. Will it just augment? Will all of this technology find a balance? I just saw a piece about a tech company in New York City that had built and was testing, it's not FDA approved yet, for folks that had from the neck down paralysis. They could not use their arms. They could speak, but that was about it. So they put in something in the brain that was a processor to receive thoughts, and then a embedded piece could then communicate, connect them to a device. Now, that bridge that we're going to cross where human and technology combine is going to be the next big step. And they're doing it now. They're testing it. And they talked to the folks that were using it that had no other way they could. So they were showing using like a mobile device. A guy could correspond with people through thought. It was just mind-blowing. So we are not far from a merge point, I think. I think when we get into the wetware where we can upload things and upgrade things, how do you keep the human element in this societal, like the Indian knowledge systems, where they are not promoting one over the other?
One thought that came to mind, you have a good example there, and sure, where somebody is incapacitated, and there's certainly a tremendous need for applying technology to help people regain normal livelihoods, right? Even that brain interface that you talked about would be extremely helpful. So yes, augmenting someone's capacity where it is for some reason inhibited, yes, that's an extreme benefit. What we don't want to see happen, though, I believe, is just having everybody get one of these, say, hey, get these brain implants, and you can just sit in your couch and think about something, and your robot will bring you your beer and your pretzels.
Now, wait a minute. Why are you saying that's bad? What? Why is that bad?
Yeah, there you go. Just imagine, just extrapolate that. We're already suffering health. You have type 2 diabetes running rampant and all that sort of stuff because of our lifestyle. Yeah, my point is, just be aware of the boundaries for the proper situation. Of course, leverage technology to the greatest extent, but do not become the technology. Do not become technology. Do not become the Borg. Rather, but still, let me emphasize, we are not evolving our neurophysiology, which has the capacity to evolve. And if you believe the old psychology used to say, we're using 10% of our mind, and that's probably, we're using some percentage of our mind. So my point that I try to drive is, while Moore's law is racing ahead to our great benefit in the silicon side, we should be doing the same thing on the human side. There we go back to, okay, how did these ancient rishis, how did they acquire all of this incredible wisdom of the movement of the planets and of the elements and of all the forces of nature? They knew all that stuff. How? They were attuned. That kind of got lost along the way. In addition to what we're doing here in technology, let's put some effort into reclaiming and then evolving our innate capacity as humans. Can you imagine then what kind of world we can create if we do that?
Don't you think that most humans in this day and age would not equate the human system as a system? They would say, well, it's just people. There's no system there. It's just people, right? Because they don't have any societal training on what it used to be like 200 years ago. That, not to say that's a general statement, but certain ethnic groups have different human connections than others. Yeah. That is a trait that adds depth and context to a social structure that as a society we do not have. So let's go back to college. All your 101 classes, all your first level classes should how to be human and be in a relationship with the rest of the humans be a class right next to technology course or KM course, or to talk about systems.
I would go a step further because, yeah, you're using a keyword there, systems, but here's again where we make the break. When you say systems to most people, you're boinging into the cybernetic world, right? The technical systems or the deterministic kind of systems, the engineered systems, okay? And that's back into the traffic light kind of thing. There's the other system that is the ICAS, intelligent, complex, adaptive system. That is the natural system, different from a computational system. So again, I make that distinction. I've got to hammer that home.
Yeah.
And good idea in terms of revamping and reforming our education curricula. Blend those two. Understand that, hey, there's this natural system, ICAS, an intelligent, complex, adaptive system that behaves in far different ways and has far different characteristics. It has, emergence and other attributes and other behaviors. That is one type of system.
Well,
And then we have this other deterministic, technological, computational systems on the other side.
but I think part of how the human framework got to where systems were subsets, kind of like what we're talking about here, instead of a very inclusive but exclusive system like anybody that's taken any biology courses. You've got nervous system, you've got respiratory system, you've got all these separate tracks that create a human. But we've not taken a look at what does it take to create a society as a human is in a societal level engagement.
Oh,
Yeah.
again, though, here, let me go a little bit deep on you.
Please.
I'm still harping on natural versus computational. Where our medical, even our medical science has made the error, we've tried to make a static model of the human body.
Mhm.
Yeah, all these systems you described. So you go to any anatomy book, go through any medical program, it'll be all a static model of the leg bones connected to the thigh bone.
I'll say there's one medical field that is counter to what you're saying, and that's osteopathics. Doctor of osteopath is more of a holistic looking at the human.
Sure. So and so there's a good example of where going in the right direction versus the static model going into something much more natural.
Right.
Yes.
All right. So
the other point, one more point I was going to make.
Yep.
You really get into neat stuff. The cell itself is an entire city. So if you want to model a smart city, look at the cell, the single human cell, which has, energy coming in, it has an energy transformation, it has waste disposal, it has a little septic system in there, it has, all kinds of. Then you go to tissue, then you go to human tissue, you go to human organs, then you go to the organism, and then you go to the family, then you go to the village, you go to the city, you go to the state, province, you go to the nation. And guess what? You can go all the way out to the edge of the universe. And that's getting a little deep.
Mhm.
This is what those ancient rishis did. And if you dive into their work, which is now captured and written, you see that was the view that they had of the world. I want to just emphasize that because you're asking a very good question about coming back to societal issues and society. Nature has left clues all over the place for us. We just need to uncover them, rediscover them, and then begin to rediscover how to apply them. And when we do that, we've become very misaligned with nature.
Mm-hmm.
And we need to go back into alignment with nature. And that's one way to do it. From the innermost to the outermost. And you'll see all the same.
From the World Economic...
How's that for deep? I'm
with you, man.
How's that for deep knowledge?
I'm telling you. The World Economic Forum from 2017 has an article here called "These are the 10 best countries for skills and education." I'm not going to go on what they used for rating, and it's fairly dated. But number 1 in the world is Norway. Second, Finland. Third, Switzerland. Number 4, United States. And it goes Denmark, Germany, New Zealand, Sweden, Slovenia, and Austria. Now, it's interesting to me, and I wanted to bring this into the discussion because we've talked about attributes of people in countries and governments and societies. It all boils down to developing the human. skills, education. There's got to be an apropos level of the population that has an IQ of around here in order to get to the next lily pad. And I also pulled up the United Nations had a global index on knowledge, the Global Knowledge Index. And the last one they produced was 4 years ago. So apparently that's fallen off the radar for the United Nations. And trying to understand how the globe should be looking and rating how they look at their knowledge, how they develop and use their own knowledge.
Well, I certainly agree with revisiting how we even define and look at and rate knowledge. That needs to be totally, maybe even totally revamped. That I agree with.
You know, if you're going to rate, one of the markers I would think you would want to know for a country or nation or whatever you want to call it, how much skill and, skill and education.
I think we're focusing education, overweighting education. The needs of today are, STEM, right? STEM.
Yep.
So sure, that's going to weight heavily in any institution like the World Economic Forum in ranking countries in this regard. But if we back up, a better way to look at it is, and it's not just IQ now. There are different kinds of intelligences. Some people have as many as a dozen. So the important thing there is every individual has some innate capacity. And we're not all equally smart in equal areas, and we shouldn't be. There's your real diversity. You want real diversity. The diversity is really inside. Let's look at the different diversity of our innate capacities. People have a natural inclination toward artistic kinesthetics and mathematics and science. So let's look at that. Find a way to better understand our differences, our true diversity, what distinguishes us, what are the true measures of diversity, so that we can have a better, more, and use the word holistic, where we can take into account all of those innate capacities and then blend them together in the most effective way. Now we're launching a new stage of evolution.
So in the Global Knowledge Index, what they rate and what they look at by country, I'll read them to you, see what you think. So the Global Knowledge Index, produced annually since 2017, is a summary measure of tracking the knowledge performance of countries at the level of 7 areas, namely pre-university education, which I think is a great indicator. Doesn't have to be university. Technical and vocational education and training, higher education, research, development and innovation, information and communications technology, economy, and the general enabling environment. Now, some of those are kind of wide. Buckets are wide there. What do you think's missing out of that? Just based on our conversation, I would say there's nothing about social maturity, social,
yes.
being a human.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Just plain old, good old emotional intelligence.
But everybody wants to measure the easiest thing they can measure. How many degrees do you got? Oh, okay. That's good.
I was just going to say, I advise a lot of people who are saying, what do I major in, that sort of stuff? And it goes back, it's a little bit trite. What's your passion, right? But what are you good at? And how can you apply that to help make the world a better place? Simple as that. And 9 times out of 10, you don't need, especially today, knowledge is out there. It's available. That's another great benefit of today.
What I need from you is you to define for me what your definition of knowledge management is.
I still like Alex Bennett's version, Alex and David Bennett's. It's the capacity, and darn it, I don't have the exact words in front of me, but the capacity to make choices in varied and uncertain circumstances, something like that. Refer to. Talk about AKSciences. It was Alex and David Bennett's book, Intelligent Complex Adaptive Systems, and they have the best definition of knowledge management in there. And it's something like the capacity to make decisions in varied and uncertain circumstances.
To put it in your words, instead of trying to grab theirs, what are the 2 top things you need to have in a knowledge management?
Yeah, capacity is a word I like to use, including theirs. So in my own words, and it's my own focus, personal focus right now, is human and machine intelligence. So the capacity to combine human and machine intelligence such that your end performance is better than either one alone.
I like that. That's very good. You have to participate in the environment you're in. So what you're doing is you're combining data information and systems and wisdom and all that, and you're bringing it with the human element being just as important as the rest of it.
That we did actually a study, an internal study, where we took a problem, and the specific problem was the Boeing 737 MAX disasters. And we were able to get the data from that project, the internal emails, because Boeing had to turn them over. And so now that's public information. And what we did, we cut all that documentation and a bunch of other documentation loose on AI systems. And then we did like a double-blind study. Had the AI ingest those documents and other lessons learned documents and best practices, and then gave the same set of documents to a set of human experts without the AI tools, right? And told each one, hey, go, what do you find here? What patterns do you find? What problems did you detect? And what could have been done to prevent these disasters? The humans found things that the machines missed, and the machines found things that the humans missed. So la-di-freaking da. You need both, okay?
Yeah.
That just lit us on, and that's me. So there you go. My passion probably comes out. That's where I am right now.
Yeah.
So that brought us to today. What I'm doing now, focusing all of my energy on what is the best way to combine human and machine intelligence so we can do something far greater than either one alone.
So it's all going to come down to critical thinking and integration.
Yeah, right. Good way to express it. Yes. And critical thinking is something we have to revive that and grow that, because we're losing that in our educational system. And education means, kind of force feeding facts and factoids and take exams and regurgitate what's going to be on the exam. That's not learning. Oh my goodness. We got to get back to learning how to learn.
And the critical thinking skill is going to only be developed through defining and reinforcing cognition and comprehension.
Yeah.
The idea of those skills, it was 50 years ago, where expertise was the best way to go, where you had a narrow band, but it went deep. In probably the last 30 years that I've been experienced, a generalist has just as much gold as a specialist in most organizations, right? I think the combination is all hingent on the human component, as we have pushed and pushed and pushed the human system and how it operates. But building with that, anticipation and practice. And that's the only way you can build critical thinking, is with actual practice.
And by the way, use the key word there, anticipation, getting back to that difference between the natural systems and the computational. Natural systems have as an innate attribute, they are anticipatory. There's a body of research on that, which I won't get into, but anticipatory is a key attribute of natural systems, and that is a human innate capacity that, again, we need to reawaken and grow.
Sounds like we have a lot of homework to do.
Sure.
And we have given the listener a boatload of things to write down and go find out more about. I want to thank you, Art, for spending and investing your time in Pioneer Knowledge Services and our podcast. Thank you.
It's great to have my brain picked for a change. And we're always picking the brains of the experts. It isn't often that I get my brain picked. So thank you, Edwin, for this experience. Seriously, it's a great experience. I appreciate it.
Any last tidbits or things you want to throw in that you forgot you wanted to say?
That's another thing a computer won't do. Humans, I mentioned humans are stratified, and that's from quantum physics world. That flash of insight that is purely human, in bed at 2 a.m, boing, that flash of insight. Make sure you have that notepad right next to your bed and write it down when that insight comes, because that is something that's purely human.
Sure.
That spark. So that's a good note to end on. Humans have that capacity to have that flash of insight.
Inspiration is still us.
And make sure we recognize it when it comes and make the most of it.
Thank you, sir. Thank you for joining this extraordinary journey, and we hope the experiences gained add value to you and yours. See you next time at Because You Need to Know. If you'd like to contact us, please email byntk@pioneer-ks.org or find us on LinkedIn.